and welcome to everyone. My name is Joan Savoy, and I welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lafayette. The League is nonpartisan and nonprofit. It does not endorse or support candidates or parties. Since 1920, the League of Women Voters has worked to educate and inform voters. Membership is open to all men and women ages 16 and up. The Lafayette League encourages informed and active participation in government. Our members work to increase understanding of public policy issues and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We're proud to have as this evening's moderator, Dr. Christy Malloyd, Associate Professor of Political Science at UL Lafayette and Chair of the League's Voter Services Committee. Please welcome Dr. Malloyd.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our candidate forum here at the South Library. Tonight, we're offering the public a glimpse of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Council District 2, and we're delighted to have both of the candidates who are running here with us tonight. First, some brief housekeeping. If everybody would take just a minute and double check that your cell phone is on silent, and please keep it on silent for the duration of the forum. Next, just a few words about our format. All of the questions that we will be asking here tonight are going to be new to the candidates. They have not received these questions in advance. The questions are designed to give the candidates an opportunity to express their positions on the issues and to help the voters get to know them a little bit. Our process will be to give each candidate by alphabetical order by last name a chance to introduce themselves. They will have 1 minute for introductions. At the end of the forum, they will also have 2 minutes each for closing remarks. In between that, we will ask them a series of questions in rotating order, and you'll have up to 1 minute to answer each of those questions. Candidates are asked not to address one another directly. This is a forum. This is not a debate. Answers are going to be timed by our timekeeper, Miss Ilea, right here. She's going to give you a 15-second warning and then a timeout card for you to wrap it up whenever your time is out. Now, let's hear from our candidates. And if you will please introduce yourself. Again, just 1 minute each for your introductions, and we will begin alphabetically. Mr. Knockhand, with you first.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Kevin Knockhand, born and raised in Scott, Louisiana. I'm a father of 3 beautiful children. I've been in office for the last 8 years. Served as chairman twice, vice chair twice during my 8 years. I put a funding source committee together to identify our parish's needs and shortfalls. I enjoy music, Cajun music. I enjoy working with my medical company and active in coaching and hunting and very involved with the community. Also with a nonprofit foundation with pancreatic cancer research and raising funds for pancreatic cancer on behalf of my father. So I'm very involved. I've been in office for 8 years, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve our community for another 4 years and to continue and complete the projects that we have started and also finishing them up, as well as try to bring new ideas and revenue to the parish to help our shortfalls. Kevin Knockhand, District 2.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Hi, I am Ted Richard, and I want to represent Lafayette Parish, District 2. I have never, ever before run for public office, but over the past 8 years, I've seen a lot of things happening in local government that I see that need to be changed. As most of you know, drainage has been one of the most talked about issues recently, but I have to tell you that drainage problems is not a recent problem. It's been around for years and years and years, and we've had the opportunity to change it for many years. The other thing is I'm running a very novel campaign. I'm running my campaign on absolutely zero money. I'm raising no money. I'm spending no money. I don't think that the job of a political candidate or public candidate should be to raise money. I think that we need to take the money out of policy and out of politics and focus on the integrity of the person and the issues at hand.
Thank you for those introductions. We'll begin our rounds of questions, and again, each candidate has up to 1 minute each to answer to the question. And Mr. Richard, we're going to begin with you for question 1. What are going to be the most important tasks for this newly formed parish council, and how do you intend to tackle those tasks?
I think that the most important thing coming up is going to be the fact that we are now going to have split governments again. And what's going to be even more difficult on top of that is that we're going to have a split council without having a split president. Unfortunately, what I see happening in the council right now as a unified council is that you can already start to see the division between the people that are going to be running for the city and the people that are going to be running for the parish. And I don't think that there's going to be any place for that in the upcoming consolidated council. I think that we are going to have to work together as a city and parish council, but also look for leadership from the parish council president.
Thank you. Mr. Nakhan.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, sir. What do you think are going to be the most important tasks for the newly formed parish council, and how do you intend to tackle those tasks?
Okay, thank you. The most important part of the new parish council, and the thing that needs to be looked at, is going to look at all of the parish's state and regular mandates. What are our parish expenses? What do we have to pay? What does our revenue look like? What does our millages look like? Our biggest challenge is to get the parish on its own and find revenue where we can make better improvements through our drainage, through our roads, our bridges, and also to find revenue to help fix the fire protection shortfall that we have. As you know, we recently brought to the voters a proposition to help secure funding for fire, and it failed. And as a result of that, we lost our class rating, and homeowners has increased in the parish. So the parish needs to look at all of our expenses, what's our revenues, and find ways to fix that. As far as for the council being split, I think it'll give the parish a chance to have 5 people focused on the parish and all eyes on the parish versus the current format where we combine city and parish.
Thank you. For our second question, we will begin with you, Mr. Nakhan. How would you approach budget negotiations between the new parish and city councils, and how would you work to resolve any differences between those budgets?
Well, first, the parish needs to identify what's their expenses, what's their obligations. We also have to keep in mind that people that live in the city of Lafayette, that live in the municipalities, also live in Lafayette Parish, and we have to share those costs within the courthouse, the jailhouse. We must be able to work together and identify that and find a way to adopt a budget that reflects the needs first and then address the wants later. But it's important to note that both councils will definitely have to work together and not fight amongst each other, because there are expenses that the city is going to be responsible for only, and there's some expenses that the parish is going to be responsible for, and then there's going to be expenses that everyone in the parish is going to be responsible for. So it's important we identify what those are, work together, because at the end of the day, you have to adopt a budget that's balanced. You cannot adopt a budget that doesn't balance, or you break state law. So we have to work together.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Okay. While I agree partly with what Mr. Nakhan said about having to work together to come up with a balanced budget, we have to look at the fact that the budgets themselves are not balanced. The city itself is working off of a roughly $100 million budget. The parish, on the other hand, is working off of a roughly $10 million budget. That means that the parish currently owns only about 10% of what the city owns. In addition, over the past 23 years, what's been happening is, as the parish has been, their equipment has run out, or their equipment has broken down, or something's happened to the equipment, what would happen was the city parish government would purchase the property, and that equipment would then become the property of the parish, of the city. And so what we have is a situation where you now have a city that owns almost 90% of everything that the parish owns, and the parish has to work off of much, much, much less. So we need to get the parish back to a point where we can function equally with the city and not constantly fighting with the city.
Thank you. For our next question, we will begin with you, Mr. Richard. Given the many demands that are on the parish budget, Do you think that there's a need for additional revenues, or can the parish's needs be adequately addressed by reordering priorities, making cuts, and increasing efficiencies?
Okay. For the past few months, I've been looking at this. This is the 2018 city parish government budget. And I can tell you from looking at this and looking at what the proposed 2019 budget is, that if any person tells you that they can get everything accomplished that needs to be accomplished without raising a tax or raising a millage, they are either one, ill-informed, or number two, knowingly, blatantly lying to you. That's the only two issues that we have. We have to get the parish back on an equal footing, and I have a plan for that. Number one, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. That can be done, and it can be done on a voluntary basis. Number two, there is currently a tax that only the people in the parish pay, but the city and the people in the city do not pay. I propose that we include the cities and those municipalities to pay that additional 2 millage also. In addition, I would do a 1% sales tax for a limited time of 4 years. That would increase the parish's coffers budgets by over $213,000 and would help the entire parish.
Thank you.
$213 million, I'm sorry.
Mr. Nakam?
Ask it again.
Yes, given the many demands on the parish budget, is there a need for additional revenues, or can the parish's needs be adequately addressed by reordering our priorities, making cuts, and increasing efficiencies?
It's both. Serving on the council for 8 years, I've supported cuts. We did not fill over 50 or 60 positions in public works when we had to balance a budget. Obviously, there needs to be some revenue. My concept would be to dive back into it and try to find if there's any revenue that we could pull for the parish without having to raise a tax, would be to exhaust every avenue. This current council has made cuts to the parish budget. Again, we have things that need to be funded. Fire protection, again, it's a major situation in the parish. We have roads and drainage, but it's definitely needs to be looked at first. What can we identify revenue from? What can we cut? What can we make adjustments for first? And if all else fails, then I think the American way is then at that point you propose something to the public and let the public decide as a community if they want to tax themselves or not. But yes, you can cut, and we can do a lot of things. It's tough. We've taken a lot of money from other avenues to piece it together, but it's something I would look at it once again before I would propose any taxes.
Thank you. The next question will be to you, Mr. Nakam. Do you support or oppose the budget proposal to use part of the library fund balance to build a new library on the northeast side of Lafayette?
Okay. Here's the situation. People in Lafayette Parish paid library taxes. On the northeast corner, they were promised a library, just like my district in Scott. Scott has a brand new library on the corner of Apollo. Those people were promised a library, they paid the taxes. I feel if you promise one side of town that they're gonna get a library, and all of a sudden you pull it away from them after they paid and were promised, I don't think that's right in my opinion. I still think we've made adequate money to drainage. We have a proposition on the ballot for $8 million going to drainage, plus previously I supported rededicating, taking another 12 from the library the year before. So I believe it's important that we honor our obligation and the promise to the taxpayers on that side of town that was promised a library. And I think I would support the library having enough money to complete what was promised, and then after it's completed, to make sure they have enough money to operate all of these new libraries. And after that, I would not support any more libraries.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
I would never support anything that ever takes money away from libraries. Louisiana constantly falls 49th or 50th in education. Yet anytime we need money for anything that all of a sudden becomes a priority, we decide to take money away from education and defunding the libraries. Mr. Nakam is correct in saying that these people in the northeast part of town were promised a library. They paid for it. I heard a debate the other night where one of the people's answers to this question was, well, if they had enough money to save up $84 million, then they were already over budgeted. I think that's completely incorrect. The library did exactly what they were supposed to do. They collected the taxes, they saved their monies until they had enough money to build a library, and now that's what they want to do. Regarding drainage, there's been a drainage tax that we've been paying since 1985 to pay for drainage, some of which still has never even been started. So before you start taking money away from libraries to pay for drainage, maybe you should think about what you should have done with the money from 1985 that you didn't spend on drainage at the time.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with you, Mr. Richard.
Okay.
How would you approach request for industrial tax exemptions from local corporations under ITEP, the Industrial Tax Exemption Program?
I think that I would work with LIDA and with the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there are specific mandates into how tips work and all of that. And so I agree with them that we should use tax incentives as a form of getting certain organizations to do what they say that they're going to do. If they promise that they're going to bring 1,000 jobs into your facility, then make sure that they bring 1,000 jobs into your facility. I was recently informed about a certain situation in another parish where the company had a choice to go to one place or another. Well, this other place offered them a TIF, but they promised to hire 1,000 employees from the next parish over. That solved both issues for both parishes to where it didn't matter exactly what parish that company located in. It solved the problem for both of them. And I think that we need to look at more things like that.
Thank you. Mr. Nakhan.
Yes, I would work with LIDA, Chamber of Commerce. We have several of those that came to the council. My first priority is to see is what the effect on the revenue would it have directly tied to the parish. We only have $90,000 in the general fund. I believe in supporting and giving incentives to attract jobs and bring people to our community, which increases sales tax revenue, which increases people wanting to buy a home in our community, which is a great thing. But at the same time, if we're going to represent the parish, we have to make sure that we're not giving away what potentially could cost us. You know, the city's in a position that they can give more tax advantages because they got $40 million in reserve. You only have 90,000 in the parish. So I would look at each one individually and find out what's the economic impact. And if it's a local company versus a Walmart, I'd rather support the local guy who's trying to better his business, create jobs, and bring revenue to our community versus some chain company that they're going to be here regardless if we give them an incentive or not. I think we have to be smart when we do those incentives and look at it for what it's worth and find out, dig into what's the cost and effect of giving it or not giving it.
Thank you. For this round, we'll begin with you, Mr. Nakhan.
Yes, ma'am.
Lafayette has held several parish-wide tax renewal elections in the spring, when voter turnout is typically very low. As a parish council representative, do you support holding elections for tax renewals or for new tax proposals on spring election dates? Why or why not?
I support making sure that we have the best voter turnout and educate the voters. And I would want to see tax renewal millages or any new propositions placed on the ballot that you have a major turnout, not in the off where in the past people put elections on at that time because it's a lower turnout, it's easier to pass. I think everybody today, transparency is important, and I think it's important to put those propositions when you're going to have the biggest and the best voter turnout is how I would support that. And that's why I would support that, because as it is, we have a lot of people in this parish, but when you look at the registered voters and you look at what turns out, it's very sad. We got people that fought for our country and for our rights, and I feel that the people today need to get out and vote. But we as a government have to put it on a major ballot, on a major date, and not go around their backs and put it on something where it's a low turnout. So I would support putting on all of it on a major.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with deciding which issues to put on which ballot is really it's not the issue here. What the issue here is that our constituency does not believe in our government. They think that their vote doesn't count. Their vote does count, so it doesn't matter whether you put it on a spring election or in a fall election. I mean, look at what just happened this spring. A tax renewal that we thought should have passed to help our firefighters failed. You know, normally people put tax incentives on spring ballots because they're hoping that they're going to pass. So you can't say that it's all about voter turnout and whether it's in the spring or in the fall. What it is it's about getting the people to understand what they're voting for, educate them on exactly what the funds are going to go for, hope that they vote for it, and then you promise them by using the money for what it was intended for.
Thank you. For this question, we will begin with you, Mr. Richard. On October 12th, Lafayette voters will cast votes on a ballot proposition on whether or not to rededicate $10 million from the Lafayette Parish Library System's $26 million fund balance and allocate $8 million of that to roads, bridges, and drainage, and $2 million to parks and recs facilities. Do you think that Lafayette citizens should vote in support of this rededication? Why
No.
or why not?
No, you already knew my answer to that because I'm not taking monies away from the libraries. In my plan that you will see right over here, you will see that I have initiated what I hope is going to happen to do a 1% tax for 4 years, similar to what passed with the airport tax. Included in the revenues, when we raised $213 million over the course of those 4 years, you will see that parts of those money goes to parks and recreations, parts of it goes to firefighting, parts of it goes to each municipality. Some of it goes to Scott, Doosan, Broussard, Youngsville. All of those municipalities also get some of that money. In addition, the parish itself gets over half of that money. And of that half, the part that's allocated to that, half of that goes to drainage. So we're solving all of the issues in 4 years.
Thank you. Mr. Nakam.
Yes, ma'am. I do support the 10 million, 8 going to drainage and 2 to Parks and Recreation, for the simple fact that the library did its job. We have the fund balance to build the libraries. We'll have the money to operate them, and there's money left over. And the one thing taxpayers have always told me is before we raise taxes, look at waste. Look if there's any revenue that is out there that we can improve drainage. Well, this is a way of getting $8 million of additional drainage money without raising taxes. The other thing is Parks and Recreation is the only entity that was not consolidated. When it was consolidated, they never brought Parks and Recreation, which means the city of Lafayette taxpayers pay a Parks and Recreation millage. Nobody else pays that. So Parks and Recreation, it would be a good thing to support it because Scott Park, Doosan, Carencro, Judy's, all of these parks, this $2 million would go to the parks in the unincorporated areas of the parish. It would not go to the city of Lafayette. It's important that these kids have a nice place to play ball, and it would be a shot in the arm for Parks and Recreation to improve these parks. So I support that, and if you support this, you're still going to leave the library in great shape, and you'll still be able to build a new library and have operational money. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with you, Mr. Nakam. Sheriff Garber had requested $1.7 million to cover the salaries of 35 deputies who work at the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center, but that request was not funded in this budget cycle. Do you think that the salaries of those deputies should be covered by the parish budget? Why or why not?
It's a good question. There's a lot of debate going on with that, serving on the council, whether it's mandated, it's not mandated. Sheriff has a ruling from the Supreme Court that it is mandated, that the parish cover those expenses. Our attorneys say that it's not necessarily a mandate. So to be honest with you, I supported it based on the fact that those were mandates from what I gathered. And at the end of the day, the sheriff and the jail, it's important that we have enough people to keep the prisoners where they're at. If we don't take care of that and we don't have enough people, then what happens is somebody gets arrested, they go downtown, they charge them, they turn them around, they bring them right back in the street, and they're right back on the street where they were at. So I supported the 1.7 because of the knowledge I received that it was a state mandated. And if it is mandated and it's not paid, you could potentially be in a lawsuit, which officially we got a letter and we're being sued.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Yes, I have a totally different concept involving this specific item. Sheriff Garber asked for $1.7 million to pay for sheriff's deputies. The reason he needs $1.7 million for more sheriff's deputies and more people that work in corrections is because you currently have over 500 people sitting in jail right now who their only crime is they don't have enough money for bail. They have not been convicted of a crime. They are just sitting in jail waiting on their court date. That is what's causing the major portion of the overcrowding. So what my plan does is, my plan puts some of the money toward the jail, places some of the money back into the district attorney's office, which it shouldn't have been taken out of in the first place, and subsidize some of the pay for the public defender's office. That way you can address all of those 500 people up front, and you can do that in less than a year and get both jails nearly empty. At that point, you can take the Willow Street location, keep that to the parish, sell the downtown the downtown facility to the city, and let the city take over the city prisoners.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I went over.
For this round, we will begin again with you, Mr. Richard. In 2018, Lafayette voters in the unincorporated areas rejected a new property tax proposal that would have funded a rural fire district. At this point, what should be done to ensure adequate fire protection across the parish, especially in those unincorporated areas?
And I keep going back to what I said before with this 1% tax across, with raising the 2% millage to a 4% millage across the parish. Raising that millage would help to fund the fire district for the unincorporated areas of the parish.
Thank you. Mr. Nakhan.
Yes, it's important to note that every municipality in the city of Lafayette pays for fire protection. The unincorporated area is the only ones that we do not have a millage or sales tax dedicated to fire protection. So the parish has been, in years past, when the general fund was healthy, would be able to fund those volunteers. We are in a state that nobody volunteers today because we have families, and it's hard for them to leave and go chase a fire. We have water issues. We supply fire protection with water trucks they're 30 years old. They're breaking down. We have no fire hydrants that are qualified to have a fire truck hook up to it. So that is a very important situation, and we need to look within the parish budget if there are other avenues that we can cut back on and generate revenue for the fire protection. I had proposed something. We brought it out there. It failed. People seeing the results now. They're asking what we're going to do, We're going to have to look into other ways of raising revenue without proposing a tax to help fix that. How we do that, we have to dive into every expense and revenue and figure out if we have some money to play with, or if there's a department that maybe we can look at reducing and helping the fire department. But it is a major issue.
Thank you. For this question, we will begin with you, Mr. Nakhan. What is the role of the Parish Council in encouraging economic development and investments, especially in District 2?
Say it again.
What is the role of the Parish Council in encouraging economic development and investment in District 2?
Well, one, you got to have fire protection, because if a business is going to come, their insurance rate is going to be too high to locate. So you have to have fire protection. You got to have better drainage. You got to have better roads. That's essential to District 2 and throughout the parish in order for the unincorporated areas to attract business. Also, an important part is that when people come to the unincorporated area, we must be able to provide them a quality of life. We must be able to work with those municipalities and say, hey, if we come with a business in the unincorporated area, we know 9 out of 10, if it generates revenue for the parish, you're going to go try to annex it. Well, instead of annexing it and the parish still gets the bill and we get zero money, I'd like to work with those other municipalities and councils and mayors to do some type of profit sharing moving forward in the future. So if an unincorporated area attracts business and we get in sales tax revenue and another town wants to annex it, then we need to split the sales tax revenue. In this current format, they get 100% of the sales tax revenue and the parish is left holding the bag. So it's important that we work together and share that revenue to keep the parish whole.
Thank you. Mr. Richard?
I agree with Mr. Nake on the issue that oftentimes local municipalities will use parish and state and federal funding to build infrastructure. And then once that infrastructure is built and businesses start moving there, that municipality decides to annex it. My plan would be twofold. Number one, if you were going to annex that area, then you owe the parish at least half of what it cost you to, at least half of what it cost the parish to build you that infrastructure. Secondly, if you want to annex that business or that area of marketing that brings in revenue for you, you must also bring in that same amount of acreage in residential area. And in order to do that, you must get at least 75% of the residents of that residential area to want to be annexed. If you can't annex that residential area, then you can't annex the part that brings in revenue.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin again with you, Mr. Richard. Do you support the proposal to dredge the Vermilion as a way to address our parish-wide drainage issues?
You know, this question is not funny. It's actually sad. We talked about dredging the Vermilion River over 30 years ago. It's been something that supposedly has been in the works for as long as I can remember. Yet all of a sudden, with all the drainage problems we're having, it's like it's become this priority. Of course I think that we should dredge the Vermilion River. I think it's a smart thing to do, but I think that dredging the Vermilion should have been the first thing we did before we started fixing the drainage in the rest of the parish. Right now, we're fixing the drainage in the rest of the parish, and now that water has nowhere to go to because the Vermilion is full. So, I mean, I just think common sense, non-engineering me would tell you that in order to drain the rest of the parish, you need to have a place for the water to go to.
Thank you. Mr. Notkin?
Yes, ma'am. I support dredging the Vermilion and looking into it with the Corps of Engineers. We recently threw $5 million at this with no study, no report, if it's going to be a dredge, if it's going to be a hotspot dredge. We don't know the true effect it has on our neighbors in Vermilion or St. Martin. Or the water comes north-south. It's important that the unincorporated area north has a way to hold that water and send it down, but send it down at a timely manner where when the Vermilion's full, it allows the Vermilion to drain and it allows our water to drain. I think the biggest thing is an unincorporated area. We need big retention ponds. I'm talking lakes. I'm not talking a little 6x6 circle with water. I'm talking something that gives the kids in an unincorporated area an avenue, a park, something to play with. So while I see the importance of dredging the Vermilion, I also see the importance of making rules and regulations to protect the people up north in District 2 that continue to flood. Yes, it hits the Vermilion, it backs up, but I don't think if it's just the Vermilion, you're going to solve the issues. I think it's going to take a combination of rules and regulations and figure out how to hold the water in new subdivisions to where we can let things go out. So in retrospect, I support dredging the Vermilion, but also looking at every aspect of drainage north to south.
Thank you. Mr. Notkin, we'll begin this round with you. Should the parish restrict development in the unincorporated areas to reduce sprawl and reduce the cost of building and maintaining roads and infrastructure to support those developments?
Say that one more time.
Should the parish restrict development in the unincorporated areas to reduce sprawl?
I don't think you should restrict development. I think you should fine-tune the definition of development when you're building in cane fields and rice fields in an unincorporated area that once held tons of water for the people. If you're going to develop in the unincorporated area, I think you got to be held to a higher standard. You have to put things in place that the roads are making sure that they're done and built correctly, making sure that you have the adequate retention, and making sure that the runoff from this new development doesn't flood a subdivision that's been there for 10 years that never flooded. I think it's important that we put policies and procedures that makes it affordable for a developer to come, but at the same time, it makes the surrounding area excited to know that policies and procedures will be changed and that these new subdivisions will be required to hold that water as long as they possibly can to avoid flooding. So I don't think we should restrict it. I think we should look at our policies and procedures and make sure that if we're going to take on development, we're going to be smart with and protect our neighbors.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Yes, I actually agree with Mr. Nakane on this about if you're going to develop the unincorporated areas of the parish, then let's do it smartly. He brought up an issue about areas of the parish that never used to flood that now flood every time you get a little bit of rain. You know, unfortunately, I think part of the problem of what we have with flooding falls back on our own government and the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, as they're giving developers parameters on how to develop the property that they want to develop, whether it's industrial or manufacturing or residential, their plan is you need to raise your property. Well, great, so that way they don't flood, but guess what? Now I do. And that's happening all over the parish, whether you live in Lafayette or Scott or Dusson or wherever. And, you know, I'm going to go back to that drainage project from 1985. Had that project been actually done in 1985, we wouldn't be having the problems that we're having today.
Thank you. We'll begin this round with you, Mr. Richard. Some folks in Lafayette feel that we have especially low levels in trust in local government right now. Do you think that this view is justified? And also, what steps can be taken to increase trust in our government?
Yes, I absolutely think that this trust is justified. I mean, let's look at what we're looking at right now about taking money away from the library fund to fund something with drainage. I mean, I remember somebody told me a long time ago that lack of your preparedness does not create a priority on me. And that's exactly what's happening is we're constantly robbing from Peter to pay Paul. This city parish government does a lot of reactionary spending. Instead of being proactive, we wait till things break before we fix it. I don't know why that happens because we allocate monies to keep things running and keep things running well. So I don't know how things are constantly breaking. And I think that's partly why this constituency does not have trust in their government, is because they see the same things that I do. And they go to a council meeting and they talk for 5 minutes, but their 5 minutes in front of the council really doesn't matter because all 9 people on that council already know how they're going to vote.
Thank you. Mr. Nakane.
Yes, I definitely see the community with a lack of trust in government. And I would have to say it starts with the fact that we promise that we're going to do things, and then when the money's there, we don't do it, or we're not transparent enough. And it's important that in order to gain the trust back is that if a proposition's on the ballot and it were to pass, people want to see results. If we're going to spend $8 million in drainage and 12 the year before, then somebody better be digging some ditches and somebody better be cleaning some coulees. The problems we have is that government, what I've experienced in 8 years, it's very difficult. In our private business, we can snap our finger and we can get out there and we can get it done. With government, there's so much red tape, and before you can go do certain projects, you got to get permission from the landowner, then you got to sign a waiver, and then it just doesn't move as fast. So the perception is they just don't trust us, and we have to do a better job of that as a government and do what we say we're going to do. So I feel the vibe right now, and it's important that we change that and we do what we say we're going to do with the money and prioritize.
Thank you. For our final question of the evening, we'll begin with you, Mr. Nakane. We've touched on some of the really big picture issues facing our parish: drainage, infrastructure, and planning. Are there any issues or projects that you think the parish government should take up that haven't really gotten the attention that they deserve?
I'm going to go back to the most important issue that we have besides drainage, which we're taking care of drainage. We have to figure out a way to fix this fire protection. That is so crucial. It's not only your insurance going up, but when your house is on fire, you're going to now have to become your own fireman. You're going to have to learn how to work some hoses and put the fire out because you're not going to have the response time, and you're not going to have the equipment, and you're not going to have volunteers or personnel. I mean, that's something that we're not really focusing on. We're focusing 100% on drainage. Every candidate around here that's running, state governor is talking about drainage. But in the parish council, in District 2, and all the other surrounding districts in the unincorporated area, if we don't grab a handle and pay attention to fire protection, it's not about if only one house burns a year. That one house could be your house, it could be a child's life. I witnessed that. I don't care about how many houses burn. It's important to know that when it is burning, that you have a comfort over you, that someone's gonna show up, they're gonna have what they need to put the fire out and save you. So that needs to be our focus, and that's something that we're not paying attention to enough.
Thank you. Mr. Richard?
Yes, the one thing that I would like to address is the well-being in general of our constituency. I have said before, I would like to raise the minimum wage to $15. I hear candidates every day talking about how they're going to bring in more revenue without raising taxes. And they have a plan, and somehow we're going to go through the budget and we're going to find this money, yet nobody finds the money. And next thing you know, we have a new tax. No, I want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, by state law, we cannot mandate that any company in Louisiana raise their tax rates, raise their minimum wage to $15. What I would like to do is offer tax incentives to those companies who are paying all of their employees $15 an hour. And let's promote those companies that are paying their employees $15 an hour. And when those people are making $15 an hour, they will spend more money and you will get more tax revenue. And that will solve a part of your problem.
Thank you. We have reached the point in the forum when the candidates will each make a closing statement. Candidates, you each have 2 minutes for your remarks. We will hear from the candidates in reverse alphabetical order. We'll begin with you, Mr. Richard.
Okay. I basically think that I've addressed everything that I wanted to address in this forum. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to the constituency and to the voters. I want to thank my family for coming today. I really appreciate them being here. They know that this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I remember that I left Lafayette about 40 years ago because I just didn't feel comfortable here. It was not safe, and I didn't like the way the politics was going, and I didn't like the way the city was running. So I left. And I came back and I thought that things had changed. And they did. The people changed. And that's a great thing. But unfortunately, the government did not change. And that's what I am here to change. I'm here to change the direction of where our government is going and do the right thing. I am running no party because I don't think that I need a D or an R after my name to tell me what the right thing to do is. I was raised with a family with high morals and high standards. I know what the right thing to do is. Also, as many of you know, the council members get a salary of $28,000 something. If I am elected, I will not accept that salary. Instead, I will use that salary to hire a person to work for either the tax assessor's office or wherever the money needs to go to find and locate the $1.3 million that is due to the parish because of delinquent property taxes. So you spend $31,200, that's one full-time person paying $15 an hour. You pay them $31,200 an hour to find you $1.3 million. I think that's pretty good government.
Thank you. Mr. Nakian.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to first off and say thank you for having me here, and thank you for Ted being here and his family and everybody here. It's been a great evening. I'm running again, and I simply would like to let you know that I have 8 years experience. I've served on several committees, liaison teams. I have been in and out of this budget back and forth. I'm a family man. I'm accessible. I'm hardworking. I bring a lot of integrity, honesty, and leadership, and I feel I have what it takes to help get this parish on the right foot. And I love working with people. I love helping people. I think that it's my calling. I enjoy it very much. And at the same time, I give it 110%. I do all that I can do, and I put the rest up in God's hands. but I'd kindly ask for your support on October 12th to vote Kevin Nakhan, number 97, Parish Council District 2. Thank you.
Thank you for our candidates and for being here tonight. We appreciate
you,
your
sir.
time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We hope that everyone here tonight feels that you can make a more informed decision, and for everyone watching at home, that you've gotten to know these candidates a little bit better. The League of Women Voters has available for everyone a voter guide that's available on our website, www.lwv-lafayette.org. And just a reminder, you have until this Saturday, the 21st, to register to vote online. Early voting will begin on September 28th, and Election Day is Saturday the 12th, October 12th. We do hope that everyone here will participate in that election. Thank you for watching. We hope that you will be able to join us for our final candidate forum next week. We want to thank again our candidates, our timekeeper, the South Regional Library for hosting us, AOC Community Media for filming, and thank you everybody for coming. We hope you have a wonderful evening.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.